Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to all of you to the Princeton University Chapel. My name is Allison Bowden, and I serve here as Dean of this chapel. It is our very great honor to welcome to this magnificent space the 17th Karmapa Ojin Trinley Dorje. Karmapa literally means he who performs the activities of the Buddha. And so he does, as a 29-year-old with a particular passion for making the Buddha's actions and teachings relevant and accessible to people around the globe in the 21st century. He was born to a nomadic family in the highlands of the Tibetan Plateau, identified as the reincarnation of the 16th Karmapa at the age of 7. He then fled to India at 14, seeking the religious freedom that he needed to perform his spiritual activities. His Holiness has, in his as yet brief time in religious leadership, made such important contributions not only to Buddhist thinking, but to global thinking on the environment, spirituality, and the arts, the importance of social action, the use of technology for the spread of Dharma teaching and gender equality. On this last matter, His Holiness made the historic announcement in January of this year that he will reestablish the practice of full ordination for women within Tibetan Buddhism. His Holiness is also passionate about engaging university students on the issues I've just mentioned and more, including food justice, rampant consumerism, and the principle of interdependence in an era of technological connectivity and emotional disconnection. During his several days at Princeton, he is participating with students in a spiritual open mic night at the Murray Dodge Cafe, meeting with student activists, with student staff and faculty in the Gender Studies program, and in the Princeton Environmental Initiative. He is also attending a class in the Lewis Center for the Performing Arts and another on environmental science. This afternoon, His Holiness will speak for a time, and then his translator, Yeshe Gyamso, will pose questions that have already been collected from the audience. This is only the third visit to the United States of His Holiness, and we are so honored to have him here at Princeton. Let us give our warmest welcome to His Holiness, the 17th Karmapa.
At Princeton University, the
First of all, I want to thank Princeton University for giving me this excellent opportunity to visit and experience this great place of learning.
Yedon, Yelolea Toma, and America Library du Sanda, America Yomba, Tin Hamborella, and Yahagi, Chilo, the Gil draw tin number to yard. A cup did you son it? The Dunja Jinji to Zumato, Chunga Mane. Day in Bine, younger Casualty gave up and Delia Loyagi, Devashra Chumre, Chezan, Mazugi, and Bezu. Mambu Chevre de Inea, Chevan and Zigi Chumde, getting on Marta in Binea, and a Tatabado, and the team Sum Madoda, there, you want to Maras.
I first visited this country in the year 2008, which was also the first time I left India since settling there. And I was only able to be in this country for 2 weeks on that first visit. The first visit gave me a very strong desire to come back, which I tried to do. It was initially unsuccessful. So this is only my third visit to the United States of America.
And the Yuan Miser Chege and Labrishamont Zuliardo, Dwarves, Humaneji, Arigi, Lutuda, Turisha, Gogobida, Yala, Timom Chumbre, Drain Jusana, a relabrishamont Zulchin, was Susugi, Lutugida, Soa. Kandiji Mindi, Yamsun Yoagi, Cook Yoajida, Dana Shingi Susugi, and a Kashur Koto, Yacher Tar, Drigic Chair, Labrishimolia drag, Lirim Suege. The Tambo Labrishimo, Rinjimado Mare. They are much that Maran Love John Chingaji. In be number children drama the way near my lecture share. Dana is in Jim Casuada Rolling chair with Zerim Kayama. The imine did Zerim the Engalagology Gacha or cheese that after this Gacha or cheese that can that really shasha.
My particular reason for this visit to the United States is a desire that I have had for some time to see the great universities of this country. And this desire was born in me from my encounters with American university students in India, which gave me a strong wish to at least gain a glimpse of their experience studying in the great universities of this country. And hopefully, by gaining that glimpse, to be able to widen my own outlook. So my intention really was to come here as a student, not as a lecturer. But the plans kind of increased beyond that.
And the university truths in Drada, lecture in it, decision, loved lecture share to Chesha. Kadrin does the dark, continuing Rangish and Wazum.
Because I'm visiting 6 great universities, I have now been called upon to give 6 lectures, 1 at each. Which I don't know what to say about that.
아주 내 마부지에 랍제 나노리 년타진 랍제 디나로리아 예베 슈체 루주 마부지 에 상월로리아지 가슈레지 트비지야스미 사바라 쪼와르지 예베지 수수기 마음베 미지 나로리아 지 차와 랍신 주야스는 장도 다는 신기 지적 체도修상부지 주투야 참에 좋아당 다는 신기人民 신부에 대와 안보여래 인주산에 아는 뭐지 다나 셔베 아주 로주 가실 토제 계속 총물에 재산 고주기 네 학sam당 고주기 다 전환디기 나란리아 심규 대버서나다 심리아 전환 겸부 시라지 소수야
The students of this university that I have met exhibit tremendous enthusiasm, tremendous commitment to learning. They have tremendous aspirations, and I feel very confident that they will do great things, and they will serve this world of ours. This morning I met with several students, and seeing their energy, their courage, their passion, their benevolent concern for the future of this world was inspiring to me.
This world somewhere, jidien conflict somewhere, nyogje kan yare, tang nyom maimbe, kan yabe indusane. Mazugi artificial knowledge is because university labrishime narole jang shabek. Energy kachidegi sanandrando artificial knowledge jibugi. Ene susu maobe mizi nalolia, susu sambadan shinjigi, chawalabjin duajilia. Di jibugi lakaya sanandrando, di jibugi chokwachi kala khawshib chade yare demayo mangasolia dendengi semlia chi kashwe seba segom gni bo goare shiro gni bo goare kuyang ki samba goare dana shingi ninji gi kashwe ninji gi zilla bo jita kandar zi tambu dus goare.
However, given that this world is so filled with conflict, external knowledge, the knowledge that we gain through study, which is by necessity is directed somewhat outwardly, the world around us, rather than at ourselves, may not be enough to enable us to accomplish the great things to which we all aspire. In addition to that knowledge, we need patience. We need relaxation of mind. We need openness. And we need a compassion that motivates everything we do.
Penangadu chashawimna. Ani tambu kesa di chikashwe Longba Kugyo, Tana Shingi Mizain and Jorba Chunshur of Trizilia, Kebre, education, Labden and Draw, Trizisaru, education, Kokokation Yamara. Tatane, Lord Dunia, Lebecolia, Churji down, Tana Shingi, Rewa Zanime Jigi, Tone, Takandakama Bimum Zichebre. 이나 나랑 갤럭시에 까먹은 지체버티기 다 민지 타바 잠래 마다 텔레신 다 가암베 가쇼마 다 강갈로 수수 신이 지 가좀 강에게 배주가 제거하지 니주지 마다베 에네 텔레데는 다 가쇼지 다 미망부지 삼려 나로 까먹어 차바 점시기 버지 다 창물로 내리는 창물로 다 취했으면 그렇지. 디네지 삼던 거 디네제요. 내 인주산에 로춘슈니 아니 강에 망고지 냠제 미지나로리아 균도 챌린지 망고 충분해.
If I may use myself as an example, I was born in an isolated place in an undeveloped region. And there being no schools, I had no opportunity initially for any kind of formal education. But then when I was 7 years of age, without any preparation or warning, certainly without any wish on my part, I was recognized as the Karmapa. For me, it was just being given a name, but also being handed a burden, a source of trouble and endless challenges. It wasn't, as some people think, the instant resolution of all problems for me. It was a source of challenges. So from childhood, I've faced many, many challenges.
제가 참자 normal people this week 가르쳐의 얘기 강해로부터 간제 예매 냠수 용주 샤네 얘는 imagination 샤들래 강해로 정리도 가르쳐야 되지 아다들이 인주산 디균제다 유에서 제장 다 니제 도안에 제인주산 다 드린디 아니 조진 딘디지기 강해지 망부지 균이 총비 인주산에 에너지 아주 지가수에 참섬지 spiritual religious leaders to stand be 고스티 기보지 소화 기보를 지다 luxury 로지 드리지 나로리아야 살론 총대봐 로지 드리 많이 봐 다녀디 간다 지신다지 나는 살론 총부래 거두지 나로 살론 총부래 드리지 거두 나는 살론 총부들 댄시 아니 미신다가 강에 이내야 딱 가수래지 강에 털에 삼 동안 들래듯이 수수지 가수래 삼 동안 망아듯이 소소를 강에 준비 인자 아니 미신다기 강에 털에 비는 삼 동안 그 가수래지 마르침으로지다 다나신 딜이야 이 심구르 천왕 제를 조이야지 대인주산에 다 드린 게 시야 죄셔배나 gender issues 아르다 다 디지털이 비냐 덴댕이 수수익 미진앙기 천안의 제외 토안에 엔텔리아 수수익이 가수에 심구르 좀 용도
It may be difficult for people to imagine the challenges that someone like me has to face, but let me assure you there are challenges. I suppose some people imagine that being a spiritual leader, one leads a life of comfort, luxury, and ease. Let me assure you that is not the case. It's filled with challenges and difficulties of all kinds. But the difficulties that I've had to face have increased my empathy, because by experiencing so many challenges, it's enabled me to develop more and more concern for the difficulties that other beings, other people face. And so it's for that reason really that I have become so sensitive to and concerned with issues such as the gender issues and the other issues that you've asked me to address today.
Gender issue to share with and tagi ngode na be kablia jisong song karsada de phelia je karsada Pumelia and the full ordination cha ti kolia ji karre ngode na be kablia ji sonso chidang gi da karre phegi Pumelia the full ordination with the yadi and phegi Pume chegi Pume cholia ji karre chesho gi da karre ji domba ji bo mai ma 다 되게 분명히 에너지 최초 나눠려 하는 분명히 가르쳐지 톱다운다 안 뉴바당 다나싱 리더십 다 되는지 청구하래 되게 다나싱기 에너지조 나눠려야 되게 딱 안들 슈게 전부 즉 가르쳐야 연구해버대 아주 청구해버래 Today we can send and consider what some shop. Ke energy carre, Titolia, Miseg to Shebre, and Tanashi Peggy, the cable Mambuchigi, long, Nijum Julia, to the Mangus dance. Titolia, energy carre solution, Sujibja, summer weather, Tiniji, Bezu, Gunjin Shebre. And the Indusane. Nghe cái đó thì chỉ thi thọ là thế gì, cả số gì, xếp số chủ yếu thế anh con nào cũng inspire xong rồi, con nào cũng trả lời nam bên là đen xe, ngã răng đi à, chỉ sim cả số quy mô theo chế độ, cả na sinh cái con nào cũng cái đó chỉ lấy trả tiền rồi chỉ lấy gì bên chỉ lấy à, anh cái đó mình chỉ được số ít.
In Dean Bowden's introduction today, she mentioned that I am involved with the reestablishment of full monastic ordination for women in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. In fact, the issue of the reestablishment of full ordination for women in this tradition is not simply an issue of dharma, of religion or spirituality, nor is it only an issue of the reestablishment of the giving of vows of a certain type. It goes to the very heart of the need to protect and promote the rights of women, their empowerment, and to support their innate capacity for leadership. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has for many years demonstrated a particular concern that we find a good resolution to this issue, and assisted by many scholars has searched for a solution. My service in this regard has been to inspire, I hope, people to support this and to facilitate in whatever way I can the activity of the reestablishment of this full ordination.
Women's empower sidustane ane tana shobe ngazu kiz chombare bene chi number zam ka tawane da ji women's empower sadi shetwa khawados ben tadar bi nga shewina full education ye me ka tawane ene ji pumelia karshwe ji Pumele empowering yumedi full ordination yumed rabatang yana peranga zuji jizo na lo le benaji pumegita de ji we sho lu tu cho tu kasa we sho lo lu chongmin da na singi en pumegi ji president somewhere da de ji lang chongmin la so da de call mazun shi yare ina ti je ye ba zam shigi Pumeliaji, the full summer. Top down Chazan, top down Sanandra, that empowering summer. That in the Chazan, topic, was gave me a such. The Hindustan Azuki measurements of the 10 ziadi, and the chi numbers of numbers of that the legend do mindu. The Riziki, Pumel, top down Shavina, energy. Empowering Yavadan, the Digimavina empowering Mavadus, the Digit says Ziade and Tachido, G. Kashu 세다 대바지미 대좀 자리요.
Many people speak about the empowerment of women, and as several of us discussed in a dialogue we had this morning, it's important to remember that the restoration of women's rights and the full empowerment of women must go far beyond mere external appearances and institutionalized mechanisms or structures. Such necessary steps as restoring the full monastic ordination for women in my own tradition, famous historical steps such as women's suffrage, even the election of a woman as president, these steps are in themselves not enough to really restore women's rights, to really empower women. And we cannot assess the degree to which women are empowered in our society, the degree to which they possess the rights that are their rights, by such externals alone.
Tadang azu gwa di understanding somewhere pinsu jigijilia tuan tambadang ning taba jema mai be jikarreji pinsu jigijilia zawadang kugur chadang dana singi ji laksam sweme somewhere diji gwa di the kechum shim chadi are shema da be lumba mangbu ji nanol gego mangbu ji nanol ya 지 분명히 톱당한다 저 empowering 사이드죠 마치 팀룩이 토안에 지 가르에 순급체 대바 잠시기다 야나지 public 서머베지 만조기 무슨 잠 서머베 다지 딘데가 토안에 지 가르에 닝 타고네 델리아 지 가르에 샘솔 매야체 이미냐 따지 넘주르 잠시다 다나 신들이지 토네 제리아시 근데 이미 인상 아주기 예금 가시지 나러려야 파대비 이미냐 남발래야 다지 가수에 톱단도 차상 예비네야 단동 안 보면라 태심 강에 무균 태대야지다 아니지 용시베 동에데 무균이 용대야지 또 용기여때 가르선 조당 아주지 지기질이야 된 담밤 인 타번에 빈주지기들이야 그거로다 자와 사무지 주모도 발 때는 용면으로 섬들 정도
We need a mutual understanding, and this understanding has to be real. It can't be fake or contrived. It has to be loving, it has to be respectful, and it has to be founded in basic human benevolence and caring for one another. Many countries have used legislation to protect the rights of women or social pressure to promote them. And if you look at such societies briefly, it might seem that there is gender equality in them. But if you look very, very closely, there is still not gender equality. In spite of legislation, in spite of social pressure and political correctness, women still suffer inequality. So I think the solution to this is that we go beyond mere legislation and social pressure and try to really develop a love, really develop understanding, and real authentic concern for one another.
My God. Hindustane activist somewhere taji lengu pea mangbochil ta karshwe teni du ta teletene ngazuji karshwe lengu pea activist somewhere lengu somewhere how to translate that into English
Activists.
Tibetan
Mishi. Activists.
you don't know
Mishi.
my goodness
Lalen Tangken.
Lalen Tangi I remember some Shasake okay oh okay that dilaya 테레데네 아는 가수지 가수래지 라렌 단계 서머베 베나 다기 건드 주변에 시래 아주 별이야 게롬 오르네션 지하골이야 계제 로니시 수주시야 그래서 동아 야갈 마용 권에 계제디 고주사입니다 드레인주스탄 로니시 수주 계시야 그래 딸디 오늘은 계시시야디 라렌 단인로지 참참 계시지시에 디제지시에는 계시 두기면지 자연고래 드레인주산에 다들 무슨 라렌 단계지고 하대 쉽지 개체 계속 간대시에는 타마들이야 무슨 좀 돼야지 이내 무슨 드레인 대체할이야 아주 액티비스트 서머로 라렌 단위 지든지 고거 알아
About activism, to use this restoration of the full monastic ordination for women as an example, talk of restoring it began among Tibetans in the exiled community probably 20 or even 30 years ago, certainly before I reached India. And that talk has continued throughout these 20 or 30 years. One person after another has had things to say about it. But in spite of all of this conversation, we have not so far put it into practice. We have not applied it. And I think that in this regard, activism would consist of actually doing it, actually restoring it, instead of just talking about restoring it.
Activism sadly yes on number ni some tango. Chitan Chevinang as a living in sort of Karsuada interdependent world. The name means and it's logic activist chadiach. Same jigilia, Shugan Tegevicida, Su Karachevina, Kasa Sujigi. Chawa khandi chevina ti chigilia shugen tegevchi the industana ta ti thone ta activist lavna mandibs kemeves ina activist ngomati tindiji shugen theba zamaimba ta khansa jigi chedong ane khandar chedong ane consciously somewhere that chedong ane chawajilia shubaji 다 고가래 미유지 샤치 인텔리아 미유든 주야가 체도 안에 자와지리아 슈버지도 고가래
I suppose there are two types of activists. Given that we all live in this interdependent world and that therefore our every action affects everyone and everything else, we are all automatically activists, whether we know it or not. But there is a second type of activist, which is what I would call a true activist, and that is someone who is not simply an automatic activist, but an intentional activist. That is someone with a vision who seeks to achieve a specific goal or end.
아주 진짜 액티비즘 니가 삼동과데 개좀 쉽차되어요. 배는 아주 지조 나는래 배는 젠더 이슈를 지면 지조 난가 따당. 지조 난게 미기 따당한다. 지조 나가 미삼 동당이야 지 가수에 라심불 위에래 드린 디 균즈데는 아주 미리기 삼 동당다 안다는 신기 구조 개당 토네 에너지 베나 젠더 이슈 내에 environment 이슈 내에 상월로리아 아니 가수에 디기 슈겐 태게 여비제다 딜랑 아주 상월로는 개인 여비지 아주 시에고아디 시비지 개좀 차대 여러 something도 다디 다디
I think we need to be both kinds of activists, the automatic activist and the intentional activist. To apply this to the issues of gender, we need to pay attention to changing society. We need to pay attention to the views of our society at large and the behavior and customs of our society at large. But we also need to take responsibility for our own views and behavior as individuals. This is also true in our stewardship of the environment. We need to take on, or at least share in, our own individual responsibility as a member of the aggregate that makes up our in stewardship of the environment as in other issues as well.
United Hindustan, the Mikashilia, the Hindustan, Sosulia, Tindegi, Chawala Shuni, Gain Kriagi, Samba Yuna Menea, Twendam, Mazuchigile, Javachi Hindustan, Jigilia, Shugan Tegayavati, Mazushia Chawati, Kachum Chadiare. That is social and gain Yang Maya, that on Javati on the yard. That didn't nibody Karasana, Nazun Gain Kurne. 아주 끌론지 쿠네 미유지 소네 내가 샤디 다 액티비스 뭐마르디 대차기 알아 다 디기 액티비스데 야코 개체슈디 끌론디 개체부지 소수에기 미유다 끌론디 세버지 요과지당 에너지 가수에 넘버 타고를 요과디
Although some people may not intentionally or actively undertake responsibility, we all, whether we believe it or not, share in our common responsibility for preservation of the environment, for issues of social justice, and so on. The other type of activist, the true or intentional activist, is someone who consciously undertakes responsibility, who takes upon themselves a greater responsibility than they would otherwise have by necessity. And in such cases, when we become intentional or true activists, the most important thing is our motivation, our true aim. It's important that our goal or aim be very clear and that our motivation be very pure.
Yeah, social activist Mambo Tonyo, man said the days you got away. Very angry, somebody. Man said the angry things you are. Karasana angry child, because me you just soon, because the Kange Mambo skip. 이나 교화가 통하면 지도하는 교화 쪽에 매우 통주산에 디셈지 다 동해서는 다 some emotional 차르지 미드사나 social active 망보지 다 망보지리아 다 간다 셈리 강해서 다지 고줄이야 아니 고 담배 미유기 그노 장마디 칼리칼리 지조기 지 니줄리아 denche 그놈데 에너지 인력받을 차지. 안다 소소래 지 강에 차대 없이. 근데 정아디 뭐 가수에 로단 없이 이스레.
I've met many social justice activists, and the majority of them are angry. I think the reason that we become angry often as activists is frustration. We set ourselves a goal, a change we wish to effect, and when we don't observe the change, when we don't observe success in what we seek to do, it begins to affect us emotionally. At which point our goal has been, in a way, muddied by our frustration.
Today, we aspirations of social justice, aspiration down because we the lonely individual. That the one that the Deliaji, the Jemen, the Shushibuajilia, community that the Doshuadi, the Gajum Chadiara, says a random, the Mulam Tumpers and Rando. Randa aspiration Jigway in the one, this was the Yam Day Cheche. The Digital Tone, Kandaranga Zugi, and the Susik aspiration, the lonely individual, and the Anasing Digi, Num Jung Doji, Numen Doja Machavici. That the new the contour to Alia, Mazuik, the Kandra, the community Doshuquaji, Manzo Doshuquati, Ketchumachi, Chati, Susik Mulam di. Kansa Shingi Melam Dan Java Search. The Jagger Tone Karjbradaji come together, Richard Gajabis.
Our aspiration for social justice can never be a lonely one. It must be one that is cultivated in community. Great aspirations require community. They require the fellowship, the company, the support of other people who share the same goals and have the same concerns and motivations. By embracing community and fellowship in our aspirations, we will no longer feel ineffective or powerless. Being connected with others, coming together with others in this way seems to be important or even essential for the protection and growth of our aspirations.
Penang under Chesham and spiritual leadership needs to cashe. Near Chendu, may have Maradi in a analogy, Shanyan Ruchi, Ravajam Yanruchi, Gumach Yanruchi, who are Namjung Azuchi Siajuare. Bena, the Sangi, my church du Sana, Sangi, church, my sheva, church, Shendu, may have Maradi in a Tajiki, Mijigi. The church heroes, the Gumashuaji. That digi, the digis your tenancy. Kandara, the Hindustani, Nali mi Mamuchiki, been a gender issue in area, Dana Singi, Tinano, and Benechi Galomi issue with this Tori minute, Miss Jiggy, and a Guman in Yanda. Dana Sing Alia, Taji Kashre, this send it in the end of the day, Kashe Chonson, and Della Denche, and Susu when it's a jig check will do some sort of jira. The Nejig, the Suzuki, Kashra, Karichia, but the Hakoji. She usually does some sort of music, the Nibatimor, the Hindustani, the Junsan Dene, Mazu, Mishindalia, then the Mimamuchilia, Chendu Meavata. Yana Chem Mishab Mardin, the Zulia, Gumada, the Zulia, and the Kashra, then the Sentiment goes.
For example, in my case, as a spiritual leader, there are some things, some responsibilities that I have to be encouraged, even exhorted to undertake. It's not that I don't wish to share these burdens, but it won't happen until someone asks. Traditionally, we say that the Buddha after his awakening, did not teach until someone asked him to. Wasn't that he didn't want to teach, it's just someone has to ask. In the same way, my interest in gender issues, in the particular issue of the reestablishment of the bhikshuni, or full monastic ordination for women, and these things have been brought about through the encouragement, even exhortation, of several people. When people demonstrate a concern for a certain issue, I naturally think, I must do something about this. I must get involved. And their encouragement literally gives me the courage to do it. Well, in that way, we all need the encouragement and support of others who share our vision.
Tene yusana jizo na gipena mina kesenda jizo nguti disulia ngasu ki rawa tengwa ati kechi mishirachi. Ngasu rawa chitembai rawa chitembai mina rawa tengwa ati ta kechi mishibichi bachi ngara sonaro tu chonso.
Jizo ne?
Jizo nguti disu.
Good
Leadership disulia ngasu ya rawa tengwa ati kusulia.
And I think that in the same way, we need to encourage and even exhort or appeal to leaders of societies in order to cause them to act as well.
I think time for question.
So now we're going to move to the questions that have been chosen or submitted, which I dropped on the floor. So I'll read the question in English, then translate it to His Holiness. If necessary, he actually speaks English. He just pretends not to, so I have something to do. The first question is, there seem to be lots of different motivations for activism. Activism motivated by anger, by guilt, or by compassion, for example. I think activism motivated by compassion is ideal, but I've noticed it is often much quieter, more private, and sometimes does not have as big a reach. Activists motivated by guilt or anger seem to work very publicly for change. What do you think about affecting structural change through these different kinds of activism? The activism.
Activists le kulon ta keshim shim chade aju khashe jik dik jik karre ta anger ro che de ya guilty da da mang bu chi ta ge shim na shi de chwa ti na mang bu she de wa de nga chu gi de mi yu de di karre mi yu druya de mi yu de da drugu ya mi yu de drubr chevel ya and ji Daji mi the Drukumewe Mina, Susugi and a Jigchadi, Sambo Imbajidang, and Yaboji Imbaji, Tijibugi, Nageki, Nage the Kuchimina, and a Tendandria de Kalahaushim Chadi or something. The Nidus and Kechishudi, and Nazugi, and Chawad and Druyalia, Pendoha, Chijun Dan, Benedis Jikashwe, Shiwadang, ji private Guyananda, Amana days, ji casualties, Subundovajan, ji public more sort of demonstration of the Guyananda. Tati Nedana Tani, Chiarimato, Nedi, Yodugisha, the Kalahostando. Yimbineam, Samsung as needs you cartoon or sana. Then Benedict Samsung Nujoda, Sharjo Begi, Barulia, 강에 테디와레 누쇼바 카시기 ane sharcho benanji karwe gender issue no bitne ko ke schedule stane an ngazo yagwe chizu dujare sha sar bijigi kandar kuzugi yana chi saja dilya bena saja kake mojile kyanzo yabu chigmindu sar bi shen du stane da dig samsung create more so karwe conflict 차대하는 지당 다들 용대야 지용 거래 아주 인도산 디균선 되네 엔 삼성 아주 액티비티 디줄이야 more sort of soft more 가져다지 space 니지 과대 개좀 차디 거래 단 너나 안들 가셔야지 미유 주야리야 개좀 차마다베 so emotional samaru susegi gar semsortigi shivjigi garwe sem tsona kimboru cheji semsor shukche chane dine chawina na kala khaw shivji wesam tagdos the situation delia tonashna me semsor shukche chane and this kangi kirso.
As I said a few minutes ago, for any activism, a motivation is of the greatest importance. As mentioned in this question, in activism we could be motivated by all kinds of things, such as anger and guilt and all sorts of things. But in activism, we are trying to accomplish a goal. A specific goal, and that is what we need to do. We will not be able, however, to accomplish our goal as activists if we approach our activism or approach the accomplishment of our goal with the arrogance or pride of thinking that we are somehow better than others, that we are good or better. As far as the demeanor with which we conduct our activism, it depends upon the specific issue in which we are involved or with which we are concerned. Sometimes a quiet, even private approach may be effective because of its softness. At other times, it may be better to be more loud, even raucous, and very public. But sometimes we are loud and raucous when a softer approach would be more effective. For example, returning to gender issues, sometimes Westerners will point to Asian or other Eastern cultures and say, we have gender equality, you don't. Our society is therefore more advanced, more developed, more evolved than yours. Our way of doing things is better than yours. You should drop your way of doing things and do it our way. Well, for obvious reasons, that kind of approach sometimes can simply create more conflict and more resistance. In such situations, being soft, being spacious in our activism will be more effective. In addition, we need to remember that the purpose of being an activist is not to be concerned with our own feelings, our own emotional involvement. The purpose in being an activist is to get something done, to bring a resolution of whatever issue we are concerned with or involved in. And I say this because sometimes, because we can become so emotionally involved in our particular cause or issue, we start to pay too much attention to our own emotional state and too little attention to the actual issue or situation that we are supposed to be dealing with to start with. The second question, it seems that there are many people who understand environmental issues, such as climate change, and why they are important, but don't do very much to change their behavior. Why is this, and how can we best encourage such people to change?
That is smoking consumption summer betaji. Tamatya
Lesser.
smoke. Smoke tilia kumdi. Didn't double chadi or smoke tamatya diliaji tama ji dinsa tama ginalo kase silia tamatya mijobi public area tamatya mijob rules danasin tana tama gumjung not only any around the smoke is killers but that tea and is bad jar than damage tea shore de in a tea mazur pingamana tam tanduni kasuraji the smoke the issue mudin draw the achi sometimes this captain channel kama di ninga sabore seria di captain sorchi genzarushi channel then shi chen information dang shi kasure ji deshi jab some shi ngazu pengmindo da zo de ngazu li motivation gwa di zawe shize gi ngazu motivation change sha di mune tane ji lebe naro le ya ji kuyugi gor geshi jab some kasure de some ni zu kodo yeb some ma sebe ningi gi ne so so chona le cha di 개점심 차대에서 something motivationally 교와 담바 이미나 아니 아주 군주는 교와도 그래 군주는 교와 침비미나 아니 아주 여기 에너지 니마르지기 지 초와 계단이야 교원도 그래 되는 교와 침비미나 아니 신에 된된 가수지 쿠율이야 교와 당도 그래 something 마다비 쿠유기 순접당 디도데 지 demonstration 샤당지 니만 가셔지리야 very active 제야 디지뷰기 핑계와 많아 다디 니마르지 수수 좋아하는 자가 예브래 다들이 인지미지 맞을이야 디브 가져다지 이모션 가져다지 디 굴롱 띵습지 거야 돼 계집시 차대 말서
It's a lot like smoking, for example. We've got to the point where there are very few places you can actually smoke. You can't smoke in public areas. And the information about how bad it is, how bad smoking is for your health is readily available. There are warnings on every package of tobacco or tobacco products. There are even advertisements about how bad smoking is. And yet, it's not enough to stop everybody from smoking. Information, explanations are not enough. There needs to be a strong, deep, fundamental motivation to change our behavior. Simply knowing that we should, that it would be better for us or better for others, isn't enough. The knowledge we gain from information is stored in our brains, but it doesn't necessarily communicate itself to our hearts. We are only willing to change when we feel a strong motivation to do so deep in our hearts. Once we feel that motivation, then we will change our behavior. And if enough people change their behavior, we will succeed in preserving this environment. But in changing our behavior, simply doing something dramatic one day is not enough. It has to be a day after day, a constant effort and constant, based on a deep conviction that comes from being fundamentally motivated to change. That there was somebody. Could Your Holiness share your own views on gay lesbian, and transgender relationships.
Experience?
No, not experience, views.
Oh. View. Oh, yeah. Joke, but it's okay. View. 다디 가르쳐요. 당 얘기 가상어만 가르쳐다. 디고는 들랍니다. 단두슬랍니다. 다디 베네드리지 셰담 가르쳐다지 나 베나텔리아지 남베기 떠주부터는 렌지 겹슬라비미나 겹단지 유기래 nga gegi ngene sumsu shue sana shedanji yugire ina yang ta nga yang kama bi meji ku ye binza nge gegi sumsu tia rangi ngangi nambe tudu dan jaba ye ru cha ro madabe kama bi sumsu dire yana nambe tudu shedan dire sa ka ru cha marwa ta ine kebas kemendo 남베드루 토는 셰비 난다 나라도 게스트 토는 셰비 미난다 소디 가르스는 based on true love somewhere 지금은 이제 세와 시샤버를 드리지 또 하네 임베체 지금 되샤다 세벌로서 어디 시샤 뒤조면 임베체 세와 시샤버를 셰비네 지금 그래 세와 시샤로 메나 and the gay the lesbian this kids chibo marta chidang a주 common summer with the casual podamo tindig zawai min pomyo park zawai binya ta diang dende ji desha zoru chemina and de yabus ke marba and the kunzel dene a주 samata de digital samtang rang ngene di samtang yala nambe ki chengene chidang nambe chengene shebimina ane ji karure kimba pomyo ji 소화계당 tele shibji nambe ngene ji ndi chiagore ndi chiago marese rule nu sharang ji karure di shuchim shibji mize 다지 돈바 예비네 니주 가래 셴마도 디단 디사도 쉽지 요 말에 드리 비싼 디균세 됨 하들을 쉬하면 something.
Well, there might be a difference between a traditionalist Buddhist answer to this and my own personal answer, which of course brings up the issue that since I'm the Karmapa, my answer would become sort of a Buddhist answer. The way I think of it, however, is this. The issue here is true love. In any relationship, whether it is between two people of the same gender, two people of different genders, if the relationship is founded on, based on true and genuine love, and not just physical desire, then it's authentic. But if a relationship is based only on desire, only on gratification, and not on love, then whether it is a gay relationship, lesbian, or heterosexual relationship, it's still not going to be very good. So the issue here is love. And that is what makes a relationship authentic and valuable. In traditional Buddhism, of course, there are lots of rules governing the behavior of householders, which is to say non-monastics, lay people. And then, of course, if you're a monastic, then everything is off the board.
Actually, one thing you didn't say.
I didn't say.
You didn't say.
Okay.
But
I don't mean it's okay that I
when
didn't
we
say
come
it.
back, I will find you. It's okay. No problem.
Do you want to say it now?
No, it's okay.
He really does speak English. How do you suggest we address the environmental crisis? How can the liberation of self be used as a foundation to perpetuate the liberation of others? The koyuk dandrawa ki gone soso range the nyamlen gone tapa topa te shenda la tapa treak tapa ke gokap jemba la the chunjen the doya mingshi the doya ke tap kanroy.
Maybe, I don't know. Another question.
Okay. How do we balance a need to be compassionate and gentle in our discussions of gender equality with our need to be heard and the immediacy of the problem? How do we engage in productive dialogue with people who do not necessarily want to listen?
Listen. Tadi samsam ji karwe ji ngachu samsam different angle to sam dangwa de kesum shi men sam tangdo bena kaduine sosu shepa bonro ji pharu bo nyamba bonro de ji mai bache sosu ine nyamba bonro che pharu bo shepa bonro che bi na kande ji che de ta kandre sosu gi ta ngachu compassion se ade ji bore re karwe kaduine bine separation che 지 가르르다지 가르르 가사 니여버를 비트리 상을 만다면 치지 간다지 수수 디 네버디암 디 과사들 예비치지 근데 지금 상을 동과한테 개좀 쉽지 차되면 섬정도 가야서는 아주 망고지 초 거뒤 이미네 초 집에 상을 당바 야나지 수수 거뒤에 시에 댕기지 이미네 생경기 인면에 상을 당마다 년게데 상을 동과 말아 배나 최신의 망고지기 년견 깔래 가지 하고 온다. 다 년견 될 때지. 때 수수니 아주 디강해야 한다 삼상. 삼상 아주 트레디셔널 최시에도서 주주 숨시들의 시에샤. 생계의 코란베 하르 레지게 시에디가래. 근데 코란 강해를 다지 강해 매서 말로 다지 뒤순 교부 싶지 않아. 다 마저들이야 최년견 돼서 다 주주 숨쉬듯이 산다디 상으로 이거 좀 동안 다 고도 강에 같이 돼요. 근데 다티 소수 춘년겐디 맞아봐도 디 강에 가리면디 하고 뭐 이제 조그도 지시한 거 조그도 조그다 가르쳐 온데 촌도 제 걸이야. 미직 최시에도 최시에도 산에 한 다보 미망고예요. 미망 보여지. 근데 그 최시에도서 미드즈르레 니르치 퇴원심 버렸어. 다마도 미질 하려 알았어. 딱 그 최에 사마시에서 내 콜이야. 투지시에서 그런 게 나래베 냠바 투지시에서 알았어. 어디 미디기 콜이야. 안게 교랑 게 계제니 냐가 체는 데 미스 nga chorang jel geje shenge di de de go de sla da den de che da sona ro de tin de che sha de de nga zu angle do de je ba ja go de ke je men do something.
Sometimes we need to think of different angles, different ways to communicate with or appeal to people. We assume communication by our talking and the other person listening. But that's not always the most effective way to get through to someone or communicate. Our compassion has to go beyond the perception of ourself and the person with whom we're dealing, to whom we're speaking, to whom we're listening, as two different people. We need to be able to put ourselves in their place. We often think of things, including the issues that are dear to us, only from our own perspective as a talker. And that causes us to talk at rather than to people. For example, someone who is teaching Dharma, a spiritual teacher, needs to keep in mind the growing fatigue of their listeners. In traditional teachings, sometimes you are supposed to go on for 3 or 4 hours teaching. And when you're the teacher, of course, you're exhilarated. You're enthused by your topic. And so the time passes very, very quickly. But without your being aware of it, you've gone way beyond the attention span of your intended listeners. Actually, it reminds me of a joke. Someone was giving a lecture, and at the beginning of the lecture, there were many, many people listening and attending. And one after one, they started leaving until by the end of his lecture, there was only one person sitting there. So he went up to the person sitting there and said, "Thank you for attending my lecture." And the person said, "Oh, I wasn't here to listen to you. I'm just waiting for the next lecturer." So sometimes we need to try different angles. The next one. I am a college student who now lives in New York City. Having spent many years of my youth in mountains, surrounded by dense forests and river valleys, I cultivated a very deep relationship with nature that I find difficult to be away from. Though New York can be seen as an extreme city space, how would you recommend a person not living in nature stay in touch with it?
다디 알 소나를 집어럽시다. 알아내 딘데 소나 정시 중뒤에 배 야채에다 간다를 다 간다 정정 구요를 지난 소나 점으로 제가 삼삼 narrow streets 말하면 종길 부수다 붙는 레디스 괜찮아를 지 어디도 레인주스안에 당가 다디 미세 가수에 아주 쿠류디 간다 다당 나랑 외에 쿠유리아 숨겹지하기 심쇼를 영화대 저 딘데가 삼버되는 정말에 인도상 아주 딘데기 아주 여기 쿠유 나예벤 제바 사무주예베디 아주 쿠유 숨겹지하기 닝도당 뉴베질리아 유튜브입니다. 야병면에 섬들을 정도스.
Well, I have the same experience. I was born and initially brought up in a pristine, entirely natural and very spacious environment. So when I'm in a city space where the streets are basically narrow canyons, I can feel them closing in on me a little bit. I think that we mitigate this sense of separation from the natural environment by becoming courageous in our efforts to preserve the environment as a whole. And I find that my involvement with environmental preservation has mitigated the sense of distance from the natural environment in which I was born.
다음에 요새로
라.
다들 버전 저기 단주.
Yes. We're going to stop here.
Let us share our deep appreciation and gratitude with His Holiness for the wonderful wisdom shared with us here this afternoon.
Thank you.